This is lesson 8-2, multiplying and factoring. So your rules for multiplying a monomial and a polynomial are as follows. The first thing you want to do is use the distribution property. You want to multiply your coefficients. Then you want to multiply any variables that are alike. You need to remember your exponent rules from chapter 7. If any variable only exists in one of the monomials, you should leave that variable alone. Here's an example. I'll guide you through it. The first thing I want to do is distribute the negative 5c to the 4c to the fourth power plus 5x. So the first thing I'm going to do is multiply the negative 5 times the 4 to get negative 20. Then I multiply c times c to the fourth, adding the exponents to get c to the fifth. Then I'll multiply negative 5 times 5 to get negative 25. I need to leave the c alone and leave the x alone. I can't do anything with either of those. My final answer is negative 20c to the fifth plus a negative 25cx. You could also write it as negative 20c to the fifth minus 25cx. Here's some examples for you to try. Pause the video at this point to give yourself a chance to do them on your own. Here are your answers. For the first one, I distributed the 10x squared y squared to everything inside. And I got 10x to the third y to the third z plus a negative 50 x to the fourth y to the fourth. In the second one, distributing a negative x to the third gives me a negative 9x to the seventh plus 2x to the sixth minus 7x third. And finally, in the last one, distributing a 5n gives me 15n to the fourth minus 5n to the third plus 40. Finding the greatest common factor is important when we're talking about factoring. To find the greatest common factor of any type of monomials, you need to find the greatest common factor of the coefficients first. Then take the least amount of each variable from each monomial. This will make more sense when the example comes. Finally, take all of your GCFs and squish them together. Here's an example. Find the GCF of 12a plus 18a squared b squared. The GCF of 12 and 18 is 6. In the first term, we have 1a, and the second term, we have 2 a's. So the least amount of a's is 1. In the first term, we have no b's, and in the second term, we have 2 b's. So the least amount of b's is 0. Therefore, my GCF is 6a. Here's some examples to do on your own. Find the GCF of these 3 examples. Pause the video at this point to give yourself a chance to do it on your own. Here are your answers. For 4x and 8y, your GCF is 4. You can't have an x and a y because the first term doesn't have a y, and the second term doesn't have an x. In the second one, it's 7ab. And the third one, just ABC, because the GCF of 36 and 25 is 1. Here's how to factor out a monomial. I'm going to have an example at the right and the directions to the left. I will simultaneously do them. So the first thing you want to do is find the GCF of all the terms in your polynomial. The GCF of 3xy and 18x is 3x. The next thing to do is to divide all of your terms by the GCF. So 3xy divided by 3x is y, And 18x divided by 3x is 6. Then, write your GCF, open parentheses, write all of your quotients with their signs included, and then close the parentheses. Like such, 3x times the quantity y plus 6. You have just completed your first type of factoring called GCF factoring. This is also called reverse distribution. Here's some examples for you to try. GCF factor each binomial. Pause the video at this point to give yourself a chance to do it on your own. Here are your answers. For the first one, you factor out a 2, and you're left with a plus b in the parentheses. So 2 times the quantity, a plus b. In the second one, you factor out an 8, and you're left with m plus n. In the third one, you're going to factor out a b, and you're left with x plus y. The next slide will contain harder examples. Let's see what you can do. Factor each of these expressions. Pause the video at this point to give yourself a chance to do it on your own. Here are your answers. In the first one, we can factor out a 4 and an x, and we're left with x to the fourth minus 6x squared plus 2. In the second one, we can factor out a 3 and an x squared. And in the parentheses, we're left with 3x to the fourth plus 5x squared plus 4x. In the third one, we can factor out a negative 6x squared. And we're left with x squared plus 3x plus 2. Remember, to check your answer, you can always distribute your GCF to see if you get back to the original polynomial. If you have any questions on this lesson, please make sure you're consulting your teacher in class.